Thank you all for joining us today. We are here to discuss the ways that we can improve our marine resource enforcement, which is an important part of the Bermuda Ocean Prosperity Program. My name is Drew Pettit. I'm the Director of Environment and Natural Resources with the Ministry of Home Affairs. I will lead you through several slides and hopefully you'll get a much better picture of what the issues are and where we are going in the future. We are also looking very much forward to feedback from yourselves so that we can add this into the plan, and which will improve the Bermuda Ocean Prosperity Program's outputs. So the Marine Spatial Plan has several non-spatial objectives, and we started one of the most important ones is the enforcement strategy. We have in fact started this before the onset of the Bermuda Ocean Prosperity Program, and we began this several years ago. But its development aligns with the Marine Spatial Plan's goals, and the Marine Spatial Plan itself includes 3 enforcement objectives, which are shown here on the slide. Today, I can provide an update on the enforcement strategy that has already been drafted. Again, this is just a draft. It needs to be improved, modified to best suit the Marine Spatial Plan. So this will help us think. This will help us to think through how to respond to stakeholders requesting improved enforcement as part of the Marine Spatial Plan, and open a conversation for how all of us can coordinate in the implementation of the enforcement strategy. As a handout to this roundtable, I've provided the enforcement specific feedback received so far to the draft Marine Spatial Plan. And then after my presentation, I'd like to take some time to discuss how to respond and incorporate some of these suggestions in the enforcement strategy. And I should say that just the non-spatial objectives at this point are develop a marine resource enforcement strategy that clearly outlines consequences for infractions and is implemented through strengthened legislation. Conduct a public education campaign to raise awareness about existing and new marine regulations, and conduct a study to measure the efficacy of enforcement measures. Now, looking at governance, what exists already. Bermuda has a large exclusive economic zone. Within its EEZ, which is under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, Bermuda has sovereign rights for the purpose of exploring, exploiting, conserving, and managing natural resources of the water, seabed, and subsoil, exploitation and exploration of the zone for energy production, jurisdiction with regard to installations, marine science research, and protection of the marine environment. This extends out 200 nautical miles, which is in total 465,000 kilometers squared. There are 7 seamounts within the EEZ. 6 are completely submerged, including Challenger, Plantagenet, Bowditch, Crescent, Moore, and Siboney. And the last one is the largest, which is the Bermuda Seamount, which is more commonly known as the Bermuda Platform. In addition to that, and much closer in, we have full sovereignty over our territorial sea limit, which is 12 nautical miles. Now, understanding the marine it's good to understand how we operate in this rather large extent of 200 nautical miles. And we've broken this down into 4 operational zones. The first is onshore, which is land-based activities. And for interest, for viewers, our operations in the Department of Environment and Natural Resources with the fishery wardens, a lot of the time is actually spent onshore. So not all the time is patrolling. We also then have the inshore zone, which is the high tide to the edge of the reef platform, which is number 2 in the blue. And then you have 3, the offshore zone, which stretches out until roughly 30 miles, which is covered by the shoreside radar and includes territorial waters as well as Challenger Bank, not all of the Argus Bank. And then the fourth stretches right out from the 30-mile mark up to the edge of the EEZ, 200 nautical miles. That gives you an idea of sort of the operation zones, the extent of what we will be doing, what we can do in those zones. There are a lot of activities. This is a slide on managed activities. There are a lot of activities that take place in the marine environment, and one of the main goals of a marine spatial plan is to manage potential conflicts between those uses, and they sort of stretch between development, environmental damage, scuba diving, all the way through to commercial fishing, recreational fishing, and release of pollutants. All of these have to be managed, have to be enforced, and it can be quite complicated, which is the benefit, why a marine spatial plan has benefits. Just as an example, when it comes to managed activities and commercial fisheries, there are over 40 landing sites for fish. So they will come in across the whole island. They come across in 24-hour periods. So these have to be managed, and it's very challenging to manage these all at the same time with the resources that we have. Now, with issues, when we've looked as part of the marine resources strategy plan that Denner has drafted, there are a large number of issues that take place in the 4 management zones. Not all of them take place in all of the zones, and so what we sought here is to define where and what those issues might be in those zones, to give an idea for management, how we might address them geographically. And so the following illustrate the type of management issues that need to be addressed, and we've defined them by theme within the management zone. And we've done this in consultation with our enforcement section, the Marine Resources Board, and the Commercial Fisheries Council. And they stretch from dumping of pollutants, unlicensed taking of fish, selling of illegal caught fish, misrepresentation or selling of imported fish, which is technically fraud, vessel and gear related issues, harassment and injury of protected species, illegal activities in dive sites and marine heritage areas, illegal importation and exportation of CITES or endangered plants and animals, and then research and management. Just to give you an idea of the partners and who we work with, the main local enforcement partners include Denner, which is the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. We have a broad focus. We manage fisheries, pollution control, marine conservation, marine heritage on the marine side, as well as the Bermuda Aquarium Museum and Zoo. Then there is the RBR, or the Royal Bermuda Regiment Coast Guard. They are an enforcement section that looks to assist all of the local agencies. And then there's the Department of Marine and Ports with their very important Maritime Operations Center, as well as the Bermuda Shipping and Maritime Authority that manages the commercial shipping registry, as well as the commercial shipping that comes through Bermuda. Now, over the last year or two, we've had the opportunity and the benefit of increasing our overseas partnerships with the UK Marine Management Organization, specifically the Blue Belt Ocean Shield program, the US Coast Guard, which is looking at domain awareness and aerial aerial surveillance, as well as the Waite Institute, which is assisting us administratively with the Bermuda Ocean Prosperity Program, specifically the Marine Spatial Plan and the Blue Economy strategy. As part of our marine enforcement strategy, we looked at a SWOT analysis, which is looking at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to our existing marine enforcement capabilities and capacity. Some of these are highlighted here. I would say that strengths, we do have relatively strong legislation. We have a large EEZ. We have very dedicated DNR staff, which focuses on marine resources, and as well as the fishery warden section. There are also other agencies that assist us. We have a lot of opportunities. We have the ability to work with other local agencies. We are expanding our cooperation with external agencies. We know that we can use we can use technology better. We have a strong public interest, and there is also that strong public interest also reflects itself on social media. Some weaknesses and threats that we have to address: high levels of administration, lack of timely and good information. And what I mean by that is that if a member of the public sees something happen, if we don't get timely and good information quickly, this soon becomes outdated and very hard for us to enforce. At this time, where we recognize that we need to improve our interagency connectivity, we need to understand that all our agencies have limited capacity, so there's a trade-off between shore-based versus coastal versus offshore activities. It's very hard to do everything at once. We have limited range of our equipment, though we're looking at improving that, and this is mainly radar that can't cover the whole extent of the 200 nautical miles of the EEZ. And some lack of expertise to take advantage of new technologies. Technology is always emerging and could also be expensive. So it's good to understand what is realistic and pragmatic in the way we do our enforcement. Then threats. There are threats to staff safety in and on the water. Lack of equipment, so that's being addressed. I mentioned capacity and capabilities with redundancies, being able to have complete coverage can be challenging at sometimes over a 24 to 7 day period. Overall reliance on other agencies with their own priorities. It can be challenging with an agency that is mandated to do something if you have to share the resource. We focus on fisheries, but customs would focus on threats at the border. So if the Coast Guard is going to help us, they have competing interests sometimes. And then lack of judicial support. Just to talk about the current situation and a little bit more about our local agencies. The Department of Marine and Ports has a very important part to play in our enforcement, but with the Maritime Operations Center, it is a significant capability and a critical partner to offshore and inshore enforcement. Bermuda has been building its Maritime Operations Center capacity with its radar for some time now, and it is well known and well respected. In addition to that, there has also been recently an IMO triple I code review. This is the International Maritime Organization's review, and it's been looking at improving merchant shipping regulations. And this has just been completed. So this has led to a raft of new legislative changes, which has brought us into good compliance. There's the Royal Bermuda Regiment Coast Guard. This was formed in 2018. It's currently comprised of 14 full-time staff and 32 part-time staff. The RBRs, though relatively new, is developing significant capabilities and capacity to assist us on the water, specifically DENR, the fisheries and protected species issues, as well as Bermuda Police Service and HM Customs. They have the ability under their legislation to enforce all fishery legislations within the territorial waters. and Denner. So I've spoken to about Denner. We have a fisheries warden section. We have a marine resources section. We work with the Commercial Fisheries Council and the Marine Resources Board. And one of the issues that was raised over a period of time was a need for an effective enforcement strategy. And over the several years, we developed one, and we have a draft at this stage that we are looking to modify. And it will become, it's a good starting point. And I'm going to be talking about that a little bit more in a minute. But what it does at this point sets the goals and objectives to introduce an industry standard of monitoring, control, and surveillance enforcement as its core methodology. It provides an assessment of the current situation by describing the existing framework, our agencies, the management operations, as I've said, the SWOT analysis, and an issue summary. Using the MCS approach and the situation assessment, the strategy provides a detailed set of recommendations. It is mainly focused on fisheries and protected species, but it can be expanded to incorporate other aspects of enforcement. At the end of it, we have a draft action plan, but again, we will be taking input from stakeholders and looking to expand that action plan, modify it to make sure that is the most effective possible. One of the new things that has happened as we were finalizing our draft plan, we had an opportunity to join the UK Blue Belt Ocean Shield program, and this is we are the first overseas territory to join this. We joined in 2021 in February 2021, and it is a 3-year work program, and it is focused on assisting us to better understand our situational awareness and our domain awareness and impacts to the health and sustainability of the maritime environment, and looking at things like, but not limited to, illegal, unreported, and unregulated, or IUU fishing, commercial and recreational vessel activity, and marine development projects. We're well on the way of implementing this. In fact, Bermuda has really benefited from this program. And these are some of the enhancements that we have, that we are in train with, that we have completed, that we've looked at surveillance, monitoring, and improving our monitoring and enforcement capabilities. We will be looking at geofencing areas of interest, which is one of those questions that people will have as well. If you're doing a marine spatial plan, how are you going to best enforce this? And we will be using technology and things along the lines of geofencing, which highlights an area on radar and no-go areas, and which allows our enforcement to be able to react very quickly. We will be looking at new legislation. Training is an important component, and we are developing a training program locally as well as with the UK Maritime, the MMO, and we're looking at better ways of data collection, and then storage, collection, and evidence collection and storage. We're also, and one of the reasons why we're here today is we're working with the Wade Institute on the Bermuda Ocean Prosperity Program. Bermuda entered into a 5-year partnership to develop a Bermuda Ocean Prosperity Program, or otherwise known as BOP. And in 2022, BOP put forward the draft Blue Prosperity Plan, which has 2 components. That is the Blue Economy Strategy and the Marine Spatial Plan. Among other things, the Marine Spatial Plan will assist in identification of key areas to be protected. Well, those are the marine protected areas, as they're commonly known. New protection measures, measures to reduce conflict between ocean users, and looking at a process to manage future development. And this will include things like environmental impact assessment requirements. Now, some of the recommendations going forward can be broken down into the monitoring, control, deterrence, surveillance, This is the MCS approach. We've added deterrence, so it's MCS and D, and the deterrence really is about public relations. So we thought that's an important component. But monitoring looks at things like measurement, gear marking, vessel marking, landing inspections, and those types of activities. Controls look at new legislation and policies, licensing, restrictions, sanctions and penalties. Surveillance is the activities such as including patrolling, monitoring, collaborative approaches such as electronic logbooks, use of smartphones and technology to surveil activities to see what's going on in certain areas. That's collaborative. And then there's non-collaborative, which includes things along the lines of radar, video cameras, night vision patrols, things like the Marine Operations Center can provide. And then there's deterrence, which really does cover some aspects of monitoring, control, and surveillance. And these things include that are captured in publications, web page, media, signs, good signage out to tell people what they can and cannot do in a certain area, notifications, meetings, and education programs. So our recommendations are sort of built around these themes. Some of the recommendations that have been brought forward so far for monitoring, you can read them here, but include review a process of statistics so that we have the best data possible to make management decisions. These include for commercial fishermen as well as for recreational fishermen, and then an inspection process for importation and selling of fish to ensure that imported fish is not sold as local fish. Control. There are 3 slides to this because there's a lot of recommendations to improve our control measures. Things like review to strengthen the license and authorization regime for the entirety of the fishery. So we're looking at a new licensing program. Licensing program to ensure compliance with the rules and regulations of fisheries. So this includes for not only for full-time commercial fishermen, lobster fishermen, other specialized fishermen. Creation of a new licensing regime for recreational fishing to sustain the long-term health of the marine fishery. So this looks across the whole board from onshore all the way off to the offshore. Other control measures include the implementation of automatic identification systems. This is already in legislation that was part of the III review. That was one of the recommendations, and this has been implemented in the new Marine and Ports Vessel Safety Regulations 2020. And this really is looking to ensuring the health and safety of our local fishing fleet. So this is it's called AIS. We're looking at other specialized technologies such as vessel monitoring systems for certain types of activities, specifically for longlining. Possibility of remote electronic monitoring for certain vessels, again for longlining. This would be in compliance with requirements for that activity, international requirements. Optimizing coordination between agencies with the aim of an integrated 24/7, 24-hour, 7-day-a-week surveillance coverage and enforcement operations. Optimizing management of our existing capabilities, such as the fishery wardens. Reviewing our fishery legislations to effectively address behavior that is detrimental to the island's marine resources. Again, more reviewing of legislation such as marine heritage, and in particular how we use the protected dive sites, which are mainly comprised at this time of historic wrecks. My last slide on controls. So creating an enforceable management system for marine and land-based aquaculture, new training, new enforcement training with new standard operating procedures for our staff. And this would include not just the fishery wardens, but also the Coast Guard. So we're all operating from the same hymn sheet, as it were. Review the current system to ensure fishing vessels are clearly marked and identifiable, make it easier for our enforcement agents when they're on the water. Skipping down, to create enforceable mechanisms to report incidents of vessel grounding, such as damage to protected corals and seagrass, so that we can effectively address and minimize the damage. And then some recommendations for improved surveillance. It's to develop a capability to undertake long-range surveillance and enforcement in the offshore areas, such as the oceanic and offshore zones that are beyond the 30-mile mark. This requires new air and satellite resources, which our new partners are able to facilitate us, assist us with. This includes the UK and the US Coast Guard. To develop the capability to undertake long-range surveillance and enforcement of the oceanic zone. Increase capability and capacity to undertake remote surveillance underwater. To review the existing surveillance programs for daylight operations to incorporate redeployment of assets to areas of greatest threat. And then skipping down to others, develop an onshore surveillance and control strategy for fishing activities onshore, not just about what happens offshore, but also what happens when with fish are landed. And develop onshore surveillance and control strategy for vendors to make sure that the Bermuda public are getting what they think they're buying. And deterrence, so recommendations for deterrence, which is very much a public communications campaign. And here it is to develop a comprehensive and integrated web-based public awareness campaign to better educate all our stakeholders on the rules and regulations, ensure that what legal notifications are gazetted as required when and how they're supposed to update our strategies for the interpretive signage strategies for fisheries and protected areas, so that when people are on site and on an area, they are aware and they know what they are allowed to do. And we cannot forget the children. They are the next generation. So we would very much, as one of our priorities, develop an educational strategy for the schools so that our up and coming citizens understand the reasons for and the needs for conservation and for management of our marine resources. So my last slide, in summary, the draft Blue Prosperity Plan has two parts. One of which is the Marine Spatial Plan, which is the MSP. And the MSP calls for the designation of 20% of Bermuda's waters as no-take marine protected areas, or NPAs. And the success of an NPA depends on adequate management and continuous monitoring and enforcement. Successful enforcement and compliance strategies require government and public participation. And based on public feedback, the draft Blue Prosperity Plan is being updated to further increase and strengthen enforcement resources, including in areas of public education and awareness, our strategic partnerships, development of adaptive strategies to strengthen our legislation and regulations, and also better use of emerging technologies. So with that, I hope this gives you a better idea of where we are, and I look forward to hearing comments from you on how we go forward, what the issues might be, how we can incorporate and better address those issues, and so that's all be fed back into the Bermuda Ocean Prosperity Plan, which will then allow us to effectively implement a marine spatial plan that will benefit all of the island for this generation and future generations to come. With that, thank you very much. I appreciate your time and energy.